Gen.G gets this first all-important win as we head into Game 2. If we're thinking Team Dignitas would choose first pick now, are we thinking Infernal Shrines perhaps for Gen.G?
I think, yeah, just something a little bit more comfortable. I don't think there's any battleground that I'm afraid to be able to take on Team Dignitas on, so I'd just be sticking to what I know unless I have that kind of counterplay, you know, big strategy involved. But if I just won game number 1 on Dragonshire, I go stick to the plan, save the pocket strategy or, you know, the kind of bamboozle moment for whenever it's necessary, not when you're leading.
And the fact that Dignitas lost on Infernal earlier, maybe that's a sign of hope. I mean, Snitch did say, hey, look, we were winning that game. We kind of threw. They were in control. But if I'm Gen.G, I think that's a very comfortable map to go to if you do have the map choice. And it's up to Dignitas on whether they do want map choice or that first pick. So I am curious on what that will be. I'm ready to get things going. It's just exciting every step.
That it is. So let's do it. Let's find the battleground, and then we can maybe start postulating as to some of these comfort picks. We are going to Tomb of the Spider Queen, where both teams feel comfortable, both teams pick it. In fact, it's interesting. A lot of the map bans that we see in Korea are deviated to ban Tomb versus Gen.G. So knowing that now, Tetcher, what do you feel like are some must picks or some must bans maybe away from Gen.G?
I mean, again, Hanzo jumps up. You've got to be careful just due to the amount of walls on the map. You have a great scatter arrow potential, and otherwise you have to be afraid of that Anubrak. It's another great hard engage map where you can get some really solid angles around in general. And then, of course, you have to be afraid of the solo laners. If you give Kyoltra a little bit too much freedom, he is going to dominate and you're going to get ganked a lot.
And one thing that I'm looking at when going into this draft, not so much that there's a necessary pick or anything of the like, but when it comes to what heroes Wubby is going to be on, I feel like we saw early on him kind of get poked and prodded in that top lane. And though that is the strategy of the Eastern scene, I think a little of that is also taking a note out of the midseason brawl and how this team can kind of, you know, struggle a bit more when Wubby does not have that free open range. And so with that in mind, I want to see something that can make a micro transition down to the bottom lane, kind of poke at the front walls, and then once they get that first Webweaver phase, find a way to be able to dive onto that for Gen.G.
Well, back to the norm with the first pick, Tyrande, Yrel priority not as high, but when I look at Dignitas, I really wonder with the bans on Diablo and Garrosh, if maybe a Johanna comes in pre-second ban for Dignitas, and for Gen.G, what route do they go down? Because we've seen a lot of Anubrak. We've seen all the Diablos and Garrosh. It's Tyrael? I mean, it just, that opens up a whole new can of worms of what can counter that.
She is starting to rise up into the even mid-bans, though, especially between certain teams and what we have seen even today, Dre.
It very much has. Here is, we get the Deckard Cain in the Hanzo coming out from Gen.G, as you talked about a little bit earlier, Tetcher, the wave clear that controls. Deckard is very heavy when it comes to zone control itself, and Tomb of the Spider Queen has so many constant rotations between mid to top, it's very likely that that is going to be able to net those kills. And as we said, great job for them to have the wave clear, at least post 4.
And as we've mentioned earlier in the tournament, Deckard is one of the few heroes who can have an okay matchup into Tyrande, due to Tyrande's Celestial Attunement mostly focusing on stuns and silences, whereas Deckard Cain, he sets up roots, which is something that is not affected, and as such that level 1 cleanse becomes a little bit less viable.
I think that's where Blaze also rises, because you need that bunker. You get caught in a bad situation late, that bunker's there as a safety option, so I agree with you. I think that's why we're seeing this draft unfold the way it is.
Having bunker also means that you're denying it from your opponents too, and things like Pulse Bomb can't be negated by it.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and just I wanted to bring back to some of the trends that we've seen over the tournament for Dignitas. This is far more comfort oriented, right? The opening with the Yrel pick on Dragonshire, I feel like it did get a little bit of punishment, but seeing the high Tyrande there for them, they've been one of the highest priority Tyrande teams throughout this tournament, but then getting Wubby back onto that Blaze, I think that's a really good pickup for them, and kind of at least pushes back a bit more on what I was concerned with there towards Gen.G in that bottom lane.
Going to be seeing the Yrel banned out. That does leave the Malthael open, which Gen.G have shown earlier on, in fact, today against Team Liquid, that they are fine to run. It's a solid map for Malthael. He has great wave clear and has a pretty decent matchup into Blaze as well, and is a fantastic finisher when you already have a setup like Hanzo. But that's not going to be the case. The solo laner, at least, is going to be Leoric.
Well, this also explains the Tracer ban a bit more in detail, because there is no lockdown for Tracer between either of those. And when we look at dive-style heroes, I mean, what else kind of comes to mind for a map like Tomb? Because finding flank positions on the Zeratul that we've seen, it's not as easy. Genji, Tracer are two of the best, so I'm curious how Gen.G or Dignitas will approach this now.
I mean, how do you get on the potential Hammer that's going to be backing this is a lot of the focus that I'm having. Is
yes,
how do you kill Hammer? You have a Leo Hanzo, who's constantly up in the front line, trading very, very well, has the debuff opportunities, post 13 into 16, Tyrael with the Sanctification, and Hanzo pushing you back there. Yeah, Lunar Flare might be able to connect, but beyond the pre-cleanse, it's suddenly a very big concern, assuming that every time we've gotten that Tyrael, that Gen.G has been very comfortable to move into that Sergeant Hammer.
Yeah. Will they do it? Will they do it? It's Rich's heroes.
Oh!
No, far more aggro for Rich's liking as he brings back Alarak again. I love that finally we're seeing Alarak be tournament meta.
Now, Hammer is fantastic, obviously, in that it already has a huge amount of protection if they had gone for it. But the issue is that Gul'dan pickup by Dignitas does threaten it a bit. It also can punish the Sanctification. Alarak is a lot more independent. He has a lot more self-sustained. Of course, Counter-Strike can really punish corruption. So you can get some really nice turnaround plays there.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point that you bring up. I would argue they fully intended to move into the Sergeant Hammer until they see the Gul'dan, and then they go, well, we're very comfortable with the Alarak. It's a direct counter to any mage. We've already talked about that. And Gul'dan likes to toe the line with his health bar. And, you know, Alarak very much enjoys any hero that likes to dabble around the 50% HP range. With that short range with the Fel Flame, that's a telekinesis, one shot, one kill.
Well, that does feel pretty late game for Team Dignitas in the Gul'dan. But my question I want to raise, Jay How, is Team Dignitas fell behind early game already on Tomb of the Spider Queen before, and yes, they brought it back. But can you do it versus this Gen.G? They've got Leoric, they've got Alarak. These things are going to start stacking up pretty hard.
Well, the wave clear is in their favor. So when you look at the traditional top-mid rotations, and then it's a matter of the bot, the Leo matches the Blaze really well, does well against the Blaze. But so I think it's a matter of who's going to get the rotation up from the bot to the mid lane to get those kills. And when you control the rotations in that mid-top, it does make it easier for decision-making on when you can afford to get those ganks, because you control how fast they can go, and you can position yourself far better in those situations. So if Dignitas doesn't want to get behind, I think it is a matter of they have the better wave clear. It's just a matter of solo lane prioritization.
Well, of course they don't want to get behind, but I want to know, can they get behind? Can they recover if that's the case versus Gen.G?
Alarak against Gul'dan. Alarak is licking his chops, so there's a very real threat.
Right, okay. Well, we were ready for the game, but right before that, I was going to get predictions, but never mind. We'll just do it. We're going to get into game 2. Dig trying to bring it back.
Dread, Tomb of the Spider Queen, an EU special. We heard about it just our last series with Dignitas here. They did get behind, but this is where we know EU goes to. This is where they played on mid-season brawl against this very same team, but the draft's so different. Very, very different.
And the Alarak confidence from Rich in this tournament has been really surprising and also honestly just impressive. The caliber that he's been able to execute on that hero. We talked about for a long time, he's been willing to bring it out against maybe opponents that he's a little bit more confident against, and then he would make it look really, really good. But now to find it in the grand finals, find it all the way throughout the bracket, we'll see if they have what it takes here with this composition to take on Team Dignitas. But first off, we got to get introductions. It's the blue squad. Over here, we're going to have Murden, played by JPL. Wubby, going to be representing on the Blaze. Poik on that Gul'dan, very vulnerable through that, along with Snitch on the Rainer. And last up is Zalia on Tyrande. Let's hear it for Team Dignitas.
Their opponents, they currently sit up 1-0 in this best of 5. It will be Sake on the Deckard, Kyocha on Leoric. Rich will be on the Alarak. All eyes will be on him. Reset on the Hanzo. And we'll have Tist on the front line on Tyrael. Give it up for Gen.G.
So one thing to keep in mind when we do see the adjustment towards that Alarak for Gen.G, that often means that they're going to want those kind of, again, a heavy amount of adjustments through their laning situation, so Alarak can find those very small skirmishes to be threatening. Great scroll of ceiling going to land here on the opening clash between these two teams on the mid wave, and they're not done. A telekinesis combo coming out, but Rich finds himself a nice amount of damage there. A Snitch putting out all that pepper.
Snitch is doing his best to try and match him, but Snitch is actually getting caught out here. That's going to be first blood. You could actually see the thought process because he's giving that penetrating round, trying to keep the Alarak at bay, but the back and forth, there's enough healing to get around for Gen.G to get first blood.
And I was just going to compliment that Team Dignitas has a composition that with the Tyrande and the Murden might have the opportunity to get those early kills to counter those rotations out in what we expect here from Gen.G. But the fact that level 1 clash not only lasting as long as it did, but more importantly, the fact that Gen.G is the one reigning victor, and that has got to be a concern here for what seemed like the Western hope of the HGC finals.
Just keeping an eye on the minimap and watching the way the Blaze is rotating around. It's denying the vision of where he's coming from, but Gul'dan stepping too far forward there. Dread, now that's the name of the game. getting punished early here.
And that is a bigger concern now already on top of what I was highlighting before. Rich didn't even land his damage output. He just used one telekinesis, and that Gul'dan is in a very bad position. And that's what I was trying to highlight when talking about the short Fel Flame range. Yes, we did see a small kind of flank there from Rich, but it's not like he has a big enough distance to be a threat only until he gets that corruption. And Echo Corruption going to take a long while. Dignitas realize things haven't been looking too good within the 1-4, so maybe having Raynor join the bottom half to get that matchup into Leoric, but Leo Wraith walks away.
I mean, think about how terrifying it is. Not only are you facing an Alarak, but you're facing Rich on Alarak, and you give up 2 early kills where he's like, thanks for the sadism, I'm even scarier every time I get a kill until you try and take me down, which is hard to do against this team of Gen.G. So that is very empowering for the early game for Gen.G.
Only furthers the snowball into their advantage, but the fact that Gen.G with this composition is not falling behind in the levels 1 through 4 in the macro front is a very big tell there. Yeah, that did come through a couple of those kills, but now we do have the explosive arrows available for the Hanzo, and that is going to allow Reset to enable the Alarak transitions to a lot greater there. Poik is a large source, if the only source really for the most part on the wave clear for Team Dignitas. So I'd expect to see Rich try and be able to match him whenever possible and look for a kill.
Kyocha starting to make his rotation up. Blaze in kind there as Wubby trying to come up. That will be sniffed out between those two, but the action clearly in these top 2 lanes where Gen.G has got the early game, and now that they do have, as you said, that level 4, that lane control that we were talking about in draft, Dignitas, you don't have as much. I mean, you have the clear with Gul'dan, but you didn't get anything from it in the early game.
And I was wondering if because of the struggles that we saw from Team Dignitas, if we would see more focus towards that bottom lane, but the fact that it has only been 1 snitch transition, a Raynor is not that threatening in that circumstance, whereas maybe if a Tehran is going to be back in that with Xaylia, things would look a little bit different here. So I can't help but feel like Dignitas is kind of scrapping here mentally to try and find a way to deal with some of this pressure, because we're now about 10 gems away from a potential Webweaver phase in the name of Gen.G. But that night camp is going to demand a couple of answers and make it more kind of decentivized to pick up a Webweaver phase.
Right now, it seems everybody's calm, trying to make the play, trying to get the rotation. And with Dignitas Dread, you don't want to make the same mistakes. You can see Snitch instantly, he's like, look, I'm not even willing to land into a combo. He just stops his channel, doesn't want to deal with any of that poke. And right now, Dignitas, they do have that camp pushing mid. Gen.G's going to respond with their own, and Dignitas, they're not even stepping forward with this Dread.
Yeah, they are moving forward, and Gen.G had a perfectly timed night camp sitting behind their own wall, so it's going to make it for a very easy clear. And look at this, with the Webweaver attempt, there's the interrupt there with the Sentinel, not going to allow that. Would have been 49 gems there for Gen.G. They would have loved to try and align that middle Wizard camp with that Webweaver phase, as we see the 1v1. Rich now is going to answer back. The Lunar Flare ends up connecting, but no one going to pull the trigger too heavily here. Tyrande and Raynor, not too much kill potential, and Alarak has the opportunity to be able to use that telekinesis both offensively and defensively here. So Gen.G missed out maybe on the mid lane pressure, but nothing to kind of be too concerned about.
Well, Gen.G, they will get the first Webweavers of the game, spawning at around 5 minutes here. So they'll try and get some control, see if they can push their way forward with this composition behind the Alarak, but the wave clear potential of Dignitas, see how much they give up here in this early going.
For now, the focus up towards top. Rich not able to hit the full combo as he pulls Snitch a little bit closer to the danger zone. Webweaver's now going to descend. Middle is not going to be attended to from either side for now. JPL in the downtime trying to threaten back. Combo coming out. Tyranda's going to be the focus. Xaylia able to kite away, dropping a couple of his own heals.
Even shielding the minions here is Gen.G using every bit of their composition with this Tyro to try and empower that push. They keep turning their attention. I mean, if you're a Murden, you're extremely tanky, but the minute you get that Dwarf Toss interrupted, you have no escape at that moment. That's something that if a telekinesis is timed right, that Murden might not be able to make it out. So roaming by himself, drawing some attention is good, but it's always, you've got to be careful what you get there.
And look at this collapse from down below in the night camp. You're going to see Kyocha flanking. If anybody oversteps, Snitch is going to be the first focus, but he's not going to go down, at least not yet. Scatter Arrow connects there from Gen.G, and they find a 3rd kill of this game. Quickly is able to transfer that focus now onto the middle fort and further the race to 10 in Gen.G's favor.
Yeah, that's a massive XP gain right there. Getting that fort down, it's just going to empower more. You get 10, you're going to be short of those gems, 31 out of 55 there. but they have control of the battleground. They can be aggressive, they can move forward, they can grab camps, and there's really nothing that Dignitas can do. They don't have the firepower to get that blow-up kill. Yes, they have the Murd and Tyrande, but when you have a Gul'dan and a Raynor behind there, and a Gul'dan that's nowhere near stacked, only 14 stacks so far, you're not getting that kill threat for a while.
Yeah, you're just begging to have a Horrify opportunity because that is a lot of where that kill potential comes until Gul'dan can scale to those later stages. The silver lining here for Team Dignitas is the fact that Gen.G does not have a Web Weaver phase opportunity with their heroic spike. Dignitas can reliably find their own heroics for themselves and get a counter turn in, but it's very important that they make something happen with that. And with the Gul'dan being such a big focus of that wave clear, I do think it might be a little bit too easy for Rich to try and focus him down once more.
Jordan,
yeah, I know.
I don't mean to alarm anybody, but that's not a Dragon Arrow there. That is a Dragon Strike locked in here, so we'll see how that plays out here in a moment.
Interesting selection, and honestly, I struggle to be able to look for a major argument for it other than it's a great counter into the bunker itself whenever that comes out. A lot of damage output for anybody who wants to try to get the retreat, and that's something we've seen Dig do a lot. They love to use the micro there of that bunker, and maybe that trickle-in damage over the long run of the Dragon Strike. When you're all, you know, hunkered down, it's a pretty easy target.
Well, there's going to be some lockdown. Lornado will buy space. Rich backs away. JPL zoning off Kyoja, who's lurking around, trying to land something on the back line. Dignitas moves forward, trying to make a play of their own, but Kyoja and team, they stand their ground, they hold, and they will force Dignitas back one more time.
And it is a strategy that we have seen out of the Eastern scene in the past with the Dragon Strike, but it has very often been out of the Korean region to pair it with that Entomb. When you lock everybody in, especially post-20, it's a bad time. Like, you are buried alive, you're just eating so much damage there. But I will say an ounce of skepticism still going to be displayed here, at least on my half. Web Weavers now are going to join Gen.G over this next siege. Wizard and the Night Camp picked up here. JPL trying to get the damage. Counter-Strike used. Wubby now going to be the focus. There's the bunker.
There it is.
Dragon Strike is going to go through with the Entomb. Silence out, and look at that. Blaze is killed.
Perfectly timed, perfectly played there to get that kill, and it couldn't come at a better time because the Web Weavers are descending. Avatar forced to be used. We see the horrifying response by Snitch to try and get the save. Dignitas Dreadnought, they are not dealing well with the pressure from Gen.G here as it's 4 kills to 0. Web Weavers spawning, and now these will push down more structures, and Dignitas just struggling to get some control over this battleground.
Some control or some kind of footing, and I will say that, you know, the one silver lining again on their half. Hold on, Tis maybe too far. They're trying to get the anchor. Might be the fact that there is no Dragon's Arrow initiation. Yeah, Hanzo is still very functional here with the Dragon Strike itself, but not having that long-range initiation might be something that Dignitas can try and get that Tyrande poke and prod inward. But it does feel like this game is quickly getting out of control. 13 talents here. No forts for Dignitas at all. And Gen.G now joining this bottom Web Weaver. Once this front wall goes down, maybe look for a kill. As Rich making even that gate seem like not a safe place for Dignitas.
Just playing around with the Eldruins there, getting back and forth. Will continue to make plays throughout this game, but with Dignitas Dreadnought 2 levels down, they're not too far off from that 13, but we've seen teams that your window is so small because Gen.G, they're playing for that 16 talent tier advantage, and Dignitas, they've struggled to move forward, move aggressively and find it. They have not yet found the kill, and now Dignitas, they sniff this out. They see that the boss is being claimed by Gen.G, so Gen.G will leash it for now.
But now they're going to be able to try and focus on to Dignitas here. Wubby's the focus for now. A lot of damage coming through, forcing out that jet propulsion. Poink is on an island. There's the Entomb. Ends up getting dropped. He gets into the bunker. The Dragon Strike there. Sanctification is dropped. Waiting for the escape there of Poink. And the answer is it will not be an escape. Wubby seems to be the focus. Shadowstar
horrified.
Poink is surviving there a lot longer than anyone expected. Sentinel not able to get the pick on to Rich. Wraith walk out from Kyoja, and Gen.G find another victim on Tomb.
They seem to have the answers. The Tyrael, even the Dragon Strike, all calculated for the approach of Dignitas, knowing they love that bunker use, love to try and snipe people down. Gen.G, they'll retreat back, regroup there, see if Dignitas can maybe try and get a turn in. They need to stop the bleeding. They don't have 13 yet, but they have been pushed back every single engagement.
But Dignitas has the opportunity to maybe find a way with those Web Weavers in this 13 talent tier window before the 16 talent tier is achieved. by Gen.G, because I feel like if it gets to that point, this game may be far too far out of control. Not only in experience, but the structural integrity so far. Gen.G still kind of looking for a web weaver phase of their own. Only 4 gems in their hands, so it's going to be a long while until that is a problem for Dig. This is their moment to strike, J-How, if they have had one throughout any point of this game.
Yeah, even Talonteers, you have the lane control, getting these clears, getting the vision, but Gen.G is going to do their best to counter. They'll hold this mid lane with that night camp, gives them vision, gives them the rotation between that top and bottom turn in, but that's a very good sign there at the top left. Completing that echoed corruption will allow you to put out more damage in these team fights and be more of a threat to get these kills, because they need every ounce that they can get right now.
They very much do. Tiss actually going to move up. He's going to quickly move out thanks to that level 13 pickup there from him, the Sword of Justice. With this downtime, Gen.G has been able to stall out long enough to maybe not threaten too much. Out of position a little bit too far. Tiss constantly going, you know, if you want to sit out too far, if you make one misstep, we're going to be able to drop the Sanctification. But in the downtime, you know, they're able to just kind of feign that. And the fact that you always have that coming your way if you are Team Dignitas, it's very, very scary, because now we're not only just worried about Rich. We aren't worried about when our bunker goes down because of the Dragon Strike. We're also worried about whether or not the Sanctification is coming at pretty much any moment in ideal circumstances.
Well, Dread Dignitas, they're looking at 16 coming for Gen.G, and they know that there's almost enough gems now for Gen.G to get another turn in, to play with that 16 talent tier advantage, and now start playing for keeps. And so Gen.G will pick up another web weaver phase. Dignitas still holding on. They have the wave clear with the Gul'dan, but make no mistake about it, with the composition of Gen.G and that Alarak, this game can go from losing one keep to losing the game very rapidly. So Dignitas, a soft approach with that Gul'dan, just try and get as much clear as they can and just try and hold on until they can get 16 of their own.
And Dignitas realizes that the situation is very dire and able to use the information of Gen.G on the mid lane to get as much damage on the top half, with the web weaver taking so long to find its happy little feet there on to the ground of Tomb of the Spider Queen. They didn't get really that much damage output through. Corruption likely going to be thrown out eventually for Poik. We'll see how much damage he can kind of get back here, but the focus is going to be onto the keep front wall for Gen.G. Bottom web weaver will become a problem over the next 20 seconds. Rich finds a combo there onto Snitch. Now JPL moves up. No Stormbolt going to connect this time.
Just to try and get the zoning, they get that. They hold on to that keep wall. So Gul'dan really showing his strength here. Now the attention will be turned towards the middle. Part of that keep wall is down. The corruption goes out, focusing onto that web weaver. Dignitas, they're holding, but Gen.G moving forward. There's the combo landing, but not before JPL was able to get the Dwarf Toss out.
Tiss once again kind of feigning if they want to execute with a... Oh, look at that. Wubby actually, jet propulsion not going to land. Kyocha not going to drop that Wraith Walk any sooner, but the combo goes down. We're not going to see the silence land out from Rich onto JPL, but the focus is still there. Stormbolt lands, but the damage from Reset is there, and they find themselves another kill, 6-0, as Gen.G is dismantling not only Dignitas,
there's a
but
combo
their face.
Into the Entomb. Poik getting bodied out of there. Poik goes down. Dragon Strike comes in. That's another member down. Wubby trying to zone off. The keep still holds, so they're actually taking shots. Is Gen.G. Gen.G moving forward. Another combo is going to land there. Wubby somehow survives. Gets the jet propulsion out, but it's not enough. Sanctification goes down. Gen.G moves forward.
They move forward, but telekinesis is not going to be on cooldown to be able to knock back Rich. Now the focus seems to be over towards the keep. They know that Xaylia is kind of left alone, but able to mount up. No dismount available, and Xaylia survives. But the second keep here on the bottom half of the battleground for Dignitas will very much not focusing enough onto mid to be able to secure it for you. So actually first keep of the game, but having that macro pressure on bottom, and more importantly, the man advantage, Gen.G wastes no time. They go up to clear mid.
At Dignitas, there's still one member down, and Ancient Blessings used to try and burst this keep down and try and take a 2-keep advantage, and it looks like mission accomplished. Dignitas still yet to hit 16, and so now they are in a very difficult spot. JPL moves forward. Lornado will say, not this time, as Gen.G in complete control of game number 2.
And Dignitas does have enough gems for even a double web weaver phase if they can somehow find a way to gain any amount of control back onto this battleground, but with the catapults constantly mounting throughout the mid lane, it's unlikely to do that, and that's why we see this moment of desperation, relying on the Horrify to try and find a way to get this. But J-How, I gotta raise the fact that that Dragon Strike is gonna be very valuable in 18 seconds. Point falling low, the combo ends up coming through. Rich is now gonna be the focus.
There goes the bunker. See if we get the response there. Counter-strike not going to land on anybody, but Rich will eat a lot of damage. Poik still low, has to be careful with the positioning. JPL still manning the front line. The stuns come in. There goes one member down. That's actually Poik that fell. And Kyocha somehow has 9 lives, but he does finally fall there. Wubby, though, in a bad spot. Snitch taking all the damage from the Dragon Strike. And right now it is 2 for 1 in favor of Gen.G.
Silence goes down, telekinesis through, and now 3 for 1 in their favor. And oh my goodness, reset with that Dragon Strike placement was so good. Snitch had nowhere to run other than dealing with that pesky dragon. 3 members down, and Gen.G are going to waste no time going now towards the core of Team Dignitas. They have the Sanctification, they have the Counter-Strike if it's going to be a problem. JPL doing his best here on the Muradin to go in, but quickly it's going to be removed here, and it looks like the damage is enough, J-How.
Snitch trying to buy time because Poik is here, has the Horrify. He has to land something clutch, but the Sanctification goes down. 70% falling. Poik comes in, Horrify lands. That's going to be a kill under reset, but Poik is now the target. He's going to fall. Snitch comes in, trying to get there. Snitch gets the heal off of his 16. They're holding for now. 45% and falling. Dignitas, they're trying to hold Dread.
Material passive will be able to do about 5 to 10%. Wubby ends up dropping bunker. The flame thrower is being thrown down. Kyocha survives. Snitch now trying to cut back, focusing on the Tis, and that is going to be Wubby now next to drop. They do get Tyrael with that passive. Now minions are going to be mount 20% and counting. Gen.G is just feeling like they are playing with their food at this point because they have the damage available. They are going to take game number 2 here against Team Dignitas and take a lead in this series 2-0.
Dignitas did everything that they could to try and survive, but the overwhelming pressure from minute 1, Dreadnought, of Gen.G lasted the entire game. That is a shutout. Dignitas was not able to get a single Webweaver phase in that game.
And they weren't even able to get a kill for what felt like forever when looking at this battleground. Gen.G, I mean, adjustments when it came to the heroic selection, the talent selection, but they are just looking good.
I raised some concerns about trying to get to the late game, and it wasn't just draft specific, it's Gen.G specific. Gen.G can snowball better than anybody in the world in Heroes of the Storm. Tetcher, can you give us some insight? Because you are the Dragon Strike master. You're the analyst here who commentates China. There's a lot more Dragon Strike there. What's up with this heroic?
There's almost no situation where Dragon Strike can really gain value except if you have that kind of setup where I believe the nickname for it is like the Dragon's Den, where you have the Entomb into Dragon Strike. But the other advantage you can get from the heroic is, as you guys so perfectly pointed out in the game, a zoning tool, massively punishing Snitch throughout multiple times in that game. But of course, when they got that one combo down as well, the damage output was just too much for Dignitas to deal with, especially when you're having to try and play around the zoning potential of that against an Alarak, who is perfect for punishing heroes who get out of position.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, and I really think that that Sword of Justice pickup at 13 had a lot higher impact than I feel like at first glance you would see. When you're in that type of game, you're always going, where's the Sanctification going to be a problem? And the fact that Tis is like, he's on your backline, he's not on your backline, and you'll never know when he's going to pull the trigger. It's intimidating.
Did I just hear you be okay?
I just complimented something other than Holy Ground at 13 against Syria. I know, it's the first time in about 4 years.
Look, I know we haven't commentated together for a while, Dreadnought, but like things have changed. I'm confused by what's happening right here. As I'm confused by what's happening out there. Did you see that segue? Yeah, nailed it. J-How, we saw Dig come in and they said they learned so much in their semifinal, and so did Gen.G. What is happening right now? How is it that Gen.G is 1 game away already from winning another BlizzCon?
It really feels like it is a matter of skill, but they're evenly skilled. But the drafts, I don't think anybody expected the Alarak. I think every single person on this panel expected the Sergeant Hammer, and it's like, all right, Gul'dan seems like a safe pick to deal with something. But then Alarak comes in, it's like, oh wait, we still have a pretty good flex player on the other team. So Rich was able to do that. The drafting in the first game, trying to get the pulse bombs onto targets that are almost unkillable. It was very difficult, I think, in these first 2 games for the draft and the game plan for Dignitas to really come out, because Gen.G has done such an incredible job countering it.
And shoutouts to Noblesse. Yeah. We have to keep giving shoutouts to Noblesse because he has been a big reason why Gen.G's drafts have gotten to this point, to a point of 1 game away from another global championship. Dignitas have to dig deep. They have to find anything they possibly can, because if they don't figure it out, they're going home. We'll be back with more of the HGC Finals.
2018 HGC Finals are brought to you in part by Republic of Gamers, Corsair, T-Mobile, Samsung SSD, and NVIDIA. Check out the new Blizzard Esports mobile app. For the first time ever, all Blizzard Esports content can be found in one place. Get the latest news and schedules for your favorite events all year long. Set alerts for tune-in reminders so you can watch live, and check scores to stay up to date. You can even tailor the look of the app to match your favorite game, and look forward to even more features coming in 2019. Download the Blizzard Esports mobile app now. Welcome back to the Hearthstone Global Games. New for the second season, we're proud to introduce HGG Cheer. Cheering is a way to show support for players and while boosting your presence in chat using bits, a virtual good you can buy on Twitch. Along the way, you'll unlock Hearthstone packs, new Twitch emotes, and a unique card back, while the players earn a share of the revenue. We'll see you in the tavern.
In the Overwatch League, you're hyping up the chat, taking your team to hashtag trending, and spreading memes at tracer level speed.
All while watching us cap the point.
Speed like that deserves a network that can keep up. With T-Mobile, get all the Overwatch League you can handle with coast-to-coast coverage. Now your arena is where you make it.
Welcome back to the Heroes Global Championship Grand Finals, where our current world champion is one game away from making a repeat happen. I'm Gilly Reed, and I'm here with Dreadnought, Jayhow, and Tetcher. And Tetcher, I'm going to start with you. Drafting on point, gameplay perfect. Are there any weaknesses to this team?
You've got to look at it and wonder, because the fact is we have seen other teams already do it in this tournament. Team Liquid already doing it during the group phase and in the bracket phase. But right now, this looks like a completely different team. We mentioned it right at the start. When finals come around, Gen.G always performs.
But that's an important point that you make, because Team Liquid and Team Dignitas are not the same team.
Nope.
Is it more of a strategical, that works sort of like a rock, paper, scissors situation? Team Dignitas, I've heard Wolf say many times, is the most Korean European team that we have.
It feels they are the most Korean European team that we have. I would say that game one was much closer than meets the eye. I think the outcome was pretty easily determined towards the end, but I think it was much closer. Game number two, though, was just a shellacking. I mean, they just dominated that entire game. From the minute they got those first two kills, it felt like Dignitas was like, wait a minute, we can't step forward at all. And that passive approach put them behind so far that every time they got a chance to come back, there was one major play, one heroic named Dragon Strike, apparently, that was able to stop a lot of that.
And I very much agree with you that, you know, game number one and game number two looked far worse when looking at Team Dignitas. But I think when we kind of scaled that with some of the struggles that we've seen of Gen.G in the past and when they look the best, I brought it up at the very beginning. How comfortable is Rich? We get him on a Phoenix. You know, it looks a little sketchy, not as clean cut. You put him on an Alarak, you're going to have a bad time. I think Dignitas, if they're going to find any way, it's going to be limiting Rich in the hero pool here. And that seems maybe asking too much, considering they got that last pick adjustment to go into the Alarak once more, and then they might overcommit into the draft to limit him. But at this point, that's the only consistent pattern we've gotten from this roster.
Well, twice we've seen them ban Gen.G, a lot of Gen.G focus, and then somewhat on the Warriors. Let's see what adjustments they make going forward into our next battleground. Game 3 will take place on Infernal Shrines, still chosen by Gen.G. Team Dignitas sticking to their guns, sticking to a first pick, and they had to know that this map was coming.
Yeah, it's very likely that they expected this to be the battleground selection here, and coming into this, I think that, you know, it's very clear that we have to be concerned with the Kerrigan. She is very new and improved, and she is a threat for any roster. I would expect that to be more for Dignitas because of their Tyrande value, and hopefully they can find a way to be able to get some sort of mix-up here. Otherwise, I fear we are going to be looking at the same circumstances that we experienced over game number 2.
We may be seeing that, but the fact is this is a map where we can see a lot of Rich favorite heroes coming in. This is a very solid Sergeant Hammer map. We can see him going on to the Hanzo again. It gets a little bit less value because it'll still be very effective with that Dragon Arrow as a follow-up. But overall, Dignitas have been known to bring out some very interesting things on this map in the past. But for now, Gen.G will be removed.
You know, I think it's time that we bring up the hero that is the ultimate game changer. And that is Medivh. This is a very good Medivh map. And if you're going to give up a Sergeant Hammer, then a Medivh is one way to instantly close that gap. And the last time these two teams faced at mid-season brawl was a Stitches Medivh comp. See if we get that here.
You mentioned the Stitches. The fact is JPL has brought it out at so many events, and sometimes it has been a series changer. And of course, it synergizes so well with this Tyrande that Dignitas have started their draft out with.
That's a high priority for Tyrael, though it has been climbing. Is this maybe an anticipation for that potential Kerrigan?
I think not only is it a little bit of the anticipation of the Kerrigan, but it also puts them in prime position that if it doesn't get ended up selecting, they have a very good synergy into it. And then let's be real here. We talked about the last draft, how when we see the Tyrael, we expect the Sergeant Hammer. This now should force one of those two bans on the Alarak or the Sergeant Hammer to Team Dignitas. And either way, you can't get rid of both of them. And so I think it would be in their best interest to focus on whatever one they think they can kill the easiest. And honestly, I'm not so sure. I think that the Sergeant Hammer may be the biggest concern, or excuse me, not the Sergeant Hammer, but the Alarak, because it counters the melee, whereas you have the Counter-Strike opportunities, whereas the Hammer, a little bit easier to get onto if you flank.
If you can bait out the siege tactics, then of course Kerrigan is a fantastic hero against Sergeant Hammer, but in this case, it seems they are more scared of the range and the knockback of Hammer, the inability to try and dive, especially with a Tyrael protection, than they are of that potential Alarak.
I don't blame him. I mean, I don't want to deal with that Sergeant Hammer, but Yrel does so much to control that front line every time Kerrigan comes in. She's going to be met with a giant hammer, and that will be swung by Kyocha, who seemingly has been unkillable, it seems like, and even when he dies on the Yorick, it's definitely for trait value, so we'll see where Dignitas comes in. With Kerrigan picked up, it means that there will be very unlikely no Medivh, because that is his hero, so tank and off lane is what we need. Do we get a
Oh!
Yes!
When in doubt!
Yes!
Hook him out! Oh, wait 1 minute!
We got baited really hard, but in this case, look at this setup, the isolation potential of Hook. Tyrande stuns, Kerrigan stuns, add in a little bit of Medivh ley lines here to isolate that hero. They might be able to pick off basically anyone here, including Tyrael, if they can keep the stun lock going.
Though it is a very appealing and kind of long-standing strategy, and Dignitas is probably the best in the world to watch it unfold. This is still a very bold move on their behalf. The Tassadar as the last selection from Gen.G to be able to provide not only the shielding capabilities to help enable that Rainer, but more importantly, removing another hook target. Between the Tyrael and the Tassadar, there's very few, only 3 kind of accessible targets there for that Medivh Stitches combo.
I got so baited, I got so excited because I've just been waiting for this combo for so long, mainly just the JPL Stitches. But last time I got really excited about the kidnapping combo. That didn't even come into play, and I think that was at the mid-season brawl. We had the Medivh, we had Stitches, but it was Putrid Bile instead, so I'm not gonna ask us if that is the strategy that gets them a win in the grand finals, but I do wanna know what your thoughts on it, and if you think it's gonna get Dig a win.
Even if it is the Putrid Bile, JPL Stitches is reliable. As I mentioned, it is a series changer. If Dignitas can execute the CC after the hook, then I don't think there's anyone on the side of Gen.G who can survive, especially if they isolate the rest of the team away from the hook target. Dignitas, the burn of execution is very much on them, but this is a comp that can work if they are feeling confident and if they play to perfection.
Well, that's the thing is I don't even think you have to. I think it's possible if you need it, but I don't think you have to. I think Putrid Bile does do well here. Tassadar, great for the map as he stacks up his Psystorm, gets damage on there, can keep people alive, but it's not like Kerrigan's under some immediate threat by anybody on this composition. A little CC from Deckard, some from Yrel, and maybe a knockback. I don't think Kerrigan is necessarily like, boy, we better get one shot, one kill here with all these portals. They could just very much just bully their way in and walk forward and just use that portal to just hit that backline and go in with Putrid Bile right out of the gate.
And the one concern that I have when looking at this draft on the side of Gen.G is the fact that last time we saw them on Infernal Shrines and their opponents be able to pick up the Kerrigan, they did not identify whether or not they had the opportunity to really take a trade there against Team Liquid over the objective, and I would argue that's part of the reason that game was as competitive as it was. If they don't end up doing that in this situation, or if you even just kind of act like you have interest around the Kerrigan, the Medivh is very likely to be able to force your hand there. So Gen.G has to clean things up a little bit, I think, when looking towards Infernal Shrines with Dignitas composition. Otherwise, they'll get a one shot and a big kill there.
Well, I want to ask all of you out there watching right now, do you believe in Team Dignitas? Good. They need it. They need your energy. They need your support. Because for Team Dignitas, the reverse sweep starts right now.
Speaking of reverse sweep, Dreadnought, I got some good advice in the last 5 minutes or so. It says you can't reverse sweep unless you go down 0-2.
So all calculated and planned here is what you're saying here from Team Dignitas.
That's what it feels like. I mean, the crowd knows. I mean, if the crowd knows, we know. And right now they're rallying their support behind this Dignitas team that, you know, it was Game 3 at Midseason Brawl. They're doing it Game 3 here on Infernal Shrines, trying to make the Medivh Stitches composition work. And this time they've got the Kerrigan in the mix. This is the reworked, reformed Kerrigan. It's time to go.
It is time to go. As you said, here we are in game number 3, Infernal Shrines, and starting on the blue side. The man himself on the Stitches. It is going to be JPL, Wubby on that Kerrigan. We have Poik playing the Hanzo, Snitch on the Medivh, and last we have Zalia on the Tyrande. Give Team Dignitas your energy!
One game away from a three-peat here at Global Championships. Here for Heroes will be Sake on the Deckard. Kyocha on the front line will be on Yrel. Rich will be on that Rainer, which means Reset will be on the Tassadar, and Tist on the front line on Tyrael. Give it up for Gen.G.
Hook already lands, combo goes down, Rich gets the combo, and look at that, Dignitas find first blood in a matter of seconds.
I'd say that energy was transferred pretty quickly from the crowd there. They come out hot and firing right now. And the quick portal over, looking for another one. They get onto Kyocha. Kyocha gets hooked right back, and right now that is a 2-kill advantage in 40 seconds.
Team Dignitas coming out swinging here with the clutch combos between the Medivh, the Kerrigan, and the Stitches there. It was so difficult for anybody to walk away. You get a little bit this way, Kerrigan's got you. Get a little bit that way, Stitches has got you. Team Dignitas displaying the synergy here. But it's important to note that this is just the first couple of kills. Gen.G not expecting that early hook onto Rich, but it definitely comes with a big experience advantage for now.
Dread, the crowd electric after those first 2 kills. We'll see if they can keep it up. I mean, think about the first 2 kills they got on Tomb. It was very far into the game. This time, Dignitas saying, hey, it's our turn to come out firing. Right now, with that experience lead, Dignitas in control, clearing these lanes. A threat at every step of the way. There's going to be a hook. Dimensional shift will get out, and you mentioned it, Dreadnought. It creates one less hook target, but even if you do get hooked, you just mash that E button, get out of there.
But I think there's something to look at now, and seeing that first kind of happen there with the dimensional shift use after the hook. If that happens around a Shrine, J-How, there's a Kerrigan combo behind it. There are so many crowd control tools by Team Dignitas in this composition that I suddenly wonder, can the Tassadar even be that famed target where you get the dimensional shift? Because likely he is just going to go down so very quickly. His health pool he feels like a piece of paper. The guy gets torn apart very, very quickly.
It's going to be important. I mean, you would think that maybe a force wall might come in at some point, but you need that extra dimensional shift. So Archon, always great. And then post 20, we've seen Archon do some magical things post level 20. We'll see if we even get there. Right now, Dignitas picking up the camps, controlling the lanes. They have about a half-level lead and climb in as we're about 35 seconds away from that first Shrine kicking off.
And as I talked about a bit before the game had kicked off, is whether or not, you know, this is a good decision to be able to match into the Shrine for Gen.G. I don't think it's impossible, but the way that they approach the Shrine needs to be very succinct. It needs to be very coordinated, and more importantly, when the initiation attempts come out from Dignitas, they have to respond better than they did over those last 2, because as we saw, that led to very quickly a double kill for Dignitas.
Yeah, Gen.G has done an amazing job of countering a lot of engagements from basically every team, but when there's a portal dropping in on your backline, that makes it much more difficult to counter because it's really a matter of survival.
It is a matter of survival, and now with Snitch making his way up, survival will be the focus. The hook not going to land there yet for JPL. Snitch now there onto the Medivh. Will be able to pick 32 skeleton defenders up. Goes in for a combo, but Kyocha knocks him back there with a nice thwack of the hammer. Getting the clear now onto the Shaman. That race will be slightly won. Portal goes down. Wubby looks for a combo. It's going to land there. Luna Flare comes out, and no dimensional shift available. Again, Tassadar